Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 2020 International eConference on Atheism. My name is Dr. Darren Slade. I'm the president of the Global Center for Religious Research, and I want to say thank you so much for being a participant with us and joining us. The incredible thing is that you have actually been joined by people from all 7 continents on this planet during this 3-day virtual event. And that's what the incredible thing is with these virtual conferences is you didn't have to pay for an airline ticket or a hotel room. You get to hear the latest philosophical and scientific research on religion from the world's greatest scholars, all from the comfort and safety of your own home. And with that said, I have the distinct privilege of being able to introduce our next presenter, somebody who I refer to as an up-and-coming shockwave in the atheist community, one Erin Lewis, who will be talking about her experiences from a stripper's perspective on how to debunk the world. Now, Erin is the wildly popular author of several books documenting her unique experience and perspective, including the book Think You Want to Be a Stripper? And Dirty Money, Memoirs of a Stripper. She has almost 20 years of experience being an exotic dancer and is now a vocal atheist activist. I want to read a quote from her website because I think it perfectly encapsulates exactly what Erin is doing. She says, "Years of taking risks, enduring judgments, and self-doubt taught me that to be truly happy meant rejecting mainstream society's idea of who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to believe. I hope to help lead others down the path to their own self-acceptance. My mission now is to help people live their best lives without the need to please other people who may be miserable in their own. Whether it be discarding dilapidated belief systems, unrealistic ideals, or simply the fear of judgment, finding the courage to be yourself can be daunting. By sharing my stories, I hope to show that you are ultimately in control of your own life and that you alone have the power to control your own happiness." And that's exactly what takes place in her most recent publication called Expose Yourself. And in this book, she promotes critical thinking and self-confidence through her unique sense of humor, challenging insights, and of course, her unique life experiences. This book really will help you find the freedom to be yourself, find confidence in taking risks, and of course, changing your life. And as a special offer, what's fantastic is that Erin has offered a special promotion to everybody who's in attendance today. If you look to the right of your screen, you should see the word offers, and it should have a little red circle with the offers. There, Erin is offering everybody in attendance today $5 off any one of her signed books. She will sign a book and you get $5 off of it. All you have to do is click the blue button and it'll take you to her website. I highly recommend that you take advantage of this deal. And with that said, I'm happy to introduce my friend Erin and say thank you so much for being here. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you for having me. It's pretty exciting. Hopefully one day we'll all get to meet in person. So today I have a little talk on how to debunk the world from maybe a little bit of a different perspective than what you're used to. So as a stripper, presenting fantasy was my job, a skill I became particularly good at. Learning to debunk fantasies others would seek to present as truth is something I became good at as well. When I started writing my first book in 2012, I was a little apprehensive writing about the adult entertainment industry. While it's true that I was annoyed by the misconceptions and stereotypes that existed in the mainstream media, I wasn't sure if I actually had the balls to write the truth as I know it. When I mentioned the idea to several colleagues, I got some pushback and even a few warnings. At one point, I was even threatened about exposing some of the darker sides of the adult entertainment industry. Yes, I know most of the other books about stripping talk about prostitution, rampant drug use, and abuse by staff and partners of strippers and other dark stuff. But the actual truth is much darker, and honestly, I was afraid to tell it. In the end, I decided I would write about my own life in the industry. I figured I would simply offer a counter argument to the stereotypical depiction of strippers that was currently out there. I changed all the names except mine in my first book in an effort to appear to be protecting those who might be embarrassed by my stories. I also changed the names of the clubs so that it looked like I was really exposing secrets that the clubs wouldn't want out there. In essence, I wimped out. I gave in to the pressure to keep quiet. In my latest book, Expose Yourself, I have decided to tell the real truth about the adult entertainment industry and the people involved. It is far scarier than you could ever imagine. This is going to sound crazy, and perhaps it is, but strippers have been involved in almost every major effort to repress the sexual revolution since the 1960s, in some cases even disposing of problem informants. Yes, really, strippers and those involved in the industry have been involved in an extensive, coordinated effort to demonize sex and stripping in mainstream society. Getting that off my chest is a huge relief, although I expect the backlash to be equally huge. All of the books and talk shows that talk about how damaging the sex industry is to women and men and even society as a whole have been carefully orchestrated by the very people they are meant to disparage. While it may seem like free love and open sexual expression would be a great thing for strippers, it wasn't. Just like the legalization of alcohol hurt the moonshine business, the idea that sex would become normal, even accepted in polite society, was a huge threat to strippers. If nudity were to become mainstream, there would be a lot of ass shakers who would have to get real jobs, or even worse, become subservient housewives. The very lucrative business of manipulating horny men would be destroyed. Like a lot of industries that are threatened by progress, the strip clubs had to find a way to combat this new push towards the acceptance of sexuality. Religion and conservative politics became the perfect cover for protecting the livelihood of exotic dancers. I know it seems nuts, but the fact that misogyny is so rampant in religious texts and its respective dogma made it a perfect vehicle to combat the hippies burning their bras. The whole underground secret maneuvering actually started in San Francisco in late 1969 with a few strip club owners, and it still operates today. While only a few dancers are involved, there are a good many who met in secret once a year to set the agenda. Here's where the real risk in exposing this becomes apparent. Before retiring, I was one of the dancers who personally witnessed the coordination and development of this agenda. When I lived in Las Vegas, I attended one of these conferences. They are usually scheduled in late January to coincide with the Adult Entertainment Awards. This is a huge event and provides a good cover for the owners and stripper operatives in Las Vegas. Also, January is usually a slower time for strip clubs in general. After the Christmas holiday spending binge and before people start to get their tax refunds, it's a perfect time to take a break from the club. I learned about these meetings from a friend of mine who is fairly high up in the ranks who was invited to attend. She thought I could be helpful to the cause because of my Catholic background. The strippers who are a part of this all act as intel gatherers because they are on the front lines, so to speak. The entertainers can gain all sorts of information helpful to the clandestine efforts. Guys with hard-ons are pretty easy to get information out of. I was surprised to learn that most of the actual operatives were not strippers themselves, but older men and women who have placed themselves high up in political and religious movements. You've probably heard, if not all of them. I won't repeat all of their names here for legal and personal safety reasons. They are the people who speak against sexual expression in all its forms. They push legislation and policies that speak to the immorality of public nudity. You know, the pearl clutchers and pious conservatives who seem intensely sexually repressed. They frown upon any and all open sexual expression and are great at keeping up appearances, but in reality are usually quite perverse. In fact, a few of the prominent conservative activists who get caught doing dirty shit are actually involved in the scheme. Remember Jim Baker? I know the reason Tammy wore so much damn makeup. Almost no one knows she was actually a very popular stripper in her time. She went by the name of Chastity. Jim himself was adamant in advocating the demonization of sex, until he got a little too greedy, of course, and got caught. Strip club owners are funding the effort for obvious reasons. Because strip clubs deal mostly in cash, it is a great way to grease the political wheels outside of the official books. Strip clubs function much like mafia-run businesses, and the money flows like glitter. I'm fairly certain that there are several well-known and not so well-known mafia members involved as well. I have known loose-lipped strippers who have stumbled on some of this activity, and well, I'm fairly certain they're now chilling with Jimmy Hoffa, wherever he ended up. Swimming with the fishes, if you catch my drift. Now do you understand why I was afraid to speak up? Writing about boners and sweatpants was simply much safer. There are two reasons why I'm choosing to talk now. The first is that I'm no longer in the business and the risk is slightly less. The second and main reason is the efforts to push religion in government are ramping up, with music and media becoming more and more sexually graphic. The efforts of this dark stripper Illuminati are becoming more brazen. As sex and nudity become more acceptable, society is starting to see that the shame and guilt that religion attaches to sex is bullshit. Strip club owners and some dancers are drastically escalating their efforts. There is a disproportionate number of religious people controlling our government. There are bills right now trying to get the Bible taught in classrooms. These bills are designed to create more strippers and strip club customers. They understand that the more that they make sex dirty, the more people will be drawn to strip clubs and other facets of the sex industry. It is simple biology, which is why science is being demonized as well. Take away the guilt and shame, and the strip clubs go away too. The threat, my friends, is very real. Or not. Were you intrigued? Incredible as that tale was, did it make sense? Because much of what I said is complete and utter bullshit. There are factual components, but the premise itself is garbage. And yet, when I repeated the lie to several people who would know better, they bought into it completely. In one case, they were really surprised that I was just telling them about it now. Is it really that far-fetched to think that Tammy Faye Baker might have been a stripper at one point? I'm not even trying to be mean, but come on, porn stars wear less makeup. Just there is no mistake. There's no conspiracy of strip club owners pushing a political or religious sexual repression agenda in order to make the sex industry more lucrative. That also means they are not murdering people who talk about it. I offered the stripper Illuminati example as a way to show how easy it is to create a conspiracy where there is none. Weaving a few known true facts in with abject lies is the most effective way to create a conspiracy theory. Conspiracies are just another example of human beings trying to explain things they don't have answers for. Sometimes conspiracies are a way to sell things or push an ideology, or sometimes just to pass the time. Our brains are, for the most part, not satisfied with not knowing how things work, or with an answer that seems too simple. When I was a kid, I had a book of unsolved mysteries that included a lengthy chapter on crop circles. The evidence was laid out meticulously. I was convinced they were made by aliens. I entertained the idea that they were man-made at first, but when the so-called evidence stating that crop circles were too complicated to be made by humans was presented to me in a certain way, I believed it. The idea that someone would take that amount of time and effort to perpetrate a hoax seemed ridiculous. My brain didn't want to accept the simplest explanation. It wanted something more elaborate and exciting. Aliens were definitely more exciting than some dude with a wooden plank, a rope, and way too much time on his hands. Conspiracies are often constructed to explain otherwise mundane anomalies. Oftentimes, the goal of the conspiracy simply doesn't fit the method. The flat earth conspiracy is an example of the method not fitting the goal. While they may be able to invent some bizarre scientific facts to justify the position, the whole thing falls apart when you ask why the government wants us to think the earth is really round. Really, what's the point? Who benefits from convincing the population that the earth is round and not flat? No one. However, there are many who benefit from convincing gullible people that the earth is flat. The people pushing this theory want attention. They want to feel like they belong to a community. Belonging to a club of people who know more than others is a strong motivator here. A way to feel superior to the mainstream sheep who have not yet been awakened to the truth. Conspiracies can be entertaining. Sometimes imagining some deeper meaning or cause to things that have otherwise normal answers is simply fun. Like other types of magical thinking, you can take it too far. The temptation to spread a conspiracy theory can be hard to resist. The look on someone's face when you tell them that strippers and strip club owners are trying to sabotage healthy sexual expression is humorous for sure. Knowing when to quit and accept that the most mundane explanation for unusual or suspicious events is important to know. If you're not careful, conspiracy thinking can snowball. Suddenly, there may be lizard people everywhere or chemicals in the water turning the frogs gay. So why is it people are misled so easily? There are various reasons. In the above case, because of my experience, I'm seen as an authority on the issue. Some people simply may take my word for it, like you may have done. My apologies. My personal credentials come from the length of time I spent in the industry. In more mainstream circles, some may see doctors or other professionals as authorities worthy to give advice based on the letters after their name, which is why some people may refer to their naturopaths or chiropractors as doctor. While they may have some impressive looking letters after their names, those professionals are not in fact medical doctors. And yet their advice and recommendations are viewed in many cases as valid medical advice. Unfortunately, many YouTube or other social media influencers can be seen as authority figures as well, something that should in fact terrify us all. Despite having no formal training or education, these authorities gain trust by simply using their charisma and personalities. They use the very fact that they aren't doctors or scientists to their advantage, creating an illusion that they have nothing to gain or no motivation except to expose the truth. Other reasons people believe such crazy ideas as the earth is flat or that viruses are spread through 5G cell phone towers come from the exploitation of our cognitive biases and availability heuristic. That is, we tend to believe information that is more available or vivid in our memories, or information that confirms what we want to believe. When we are constantly seeing news reports of violence in and around the world, we will tend to believe that our world is becoming more violent, when in fact we are living in the most peaceful time in our history. That's true, I checked. The vast majority of the time, what gets the most attention is not representative of the overall big picture. What leads to revenue-generating clicks, shares, and viewers is highly biased and deliberately misleading. The more it sells or furthers a particular agenda, the less likely it is to be factually accurate. The more it furthers what you already believe or want to believe, the less likely it is that you will do the necessary research or fact-checking to find out if what you have just seen or read is actually true. In my experimental narrative about the stripper Illuminati, I exploited the cognitive biases I believe the most likely for my audience to hold. I used some known facts as well as my knowledge that a lot of people don't know much about the industry. I have very little doubt that if I put this narrative out there, I could convince quite a lot of people, especially given some of the current reigning conspiracy theories. Compared to some, mine seems pretty rational. With so much disinformation out there in the world, it can be easy to get caught up in some of these theories, even if you know how to fact check. Fear and insecurity can be a powerful driving force in our lives and can lead us to believe stuff that isn't true. If you can realize where your fear and insecurity are driving you to believe or make up things that have no substance, you will have created a natural defense against conspiracy thinking. There are enough real things to fear in the world without having to worry if your microwave is spying on you. If you read or hear something that strikes fear in you, take a deep breath, relax, and do a little fact checking. It is far more likely than not that what is being presented might just be a conspiracy theory designed to scare you. While there is power in fear, there is a greater power in knowing just what is worth being afraid of. So who cares whether people believe in crap? Well, belief in conspiracy theories can be dangerous. Some people may act upon these theories, believing that they are the heroes in the story. Believing that kids are being sold online from a furniture retailer may become all-consuming. That can lead a well-meaning person to focus on what to other people may seem like an obvious falsehood and ultimately distract them from the real problem of child trafficking. They can end up chasing a fantasy, spending hours spreading the misinformation and spinning off into a world of needless fear. Imagine how far that energy would go if spent on fighting and uncovering the actual child traffickers. Looked at in that light, the conspiracy that Wayfair is selling children disguised as expensive commercial cabinets is an actual gift to the real traffickers. In the case of the anti-vaccination movement, There have been cases where social media campaigns have sought to discredit and even threaten leading scientists promoting vaccines, especially in the case of the HPV vaccine. I know people who support most vaccines but have gotten sucked into this particular narrative, siding with the social media experts and personalities instead of actual science. It seems that once they enter and engage in online groups that reinforce these scary but wholly unsubstantiated claims, they seem to take an comfort in the false assurance from other voices in the group than from actual doctors. The explanation I hear mostly for this choice is that Big Pharma is pushing vaccines in order to make money, and that natural alternatives such as vitamins and superfoods are a safer way to go. When I mentioned that the vitamin manufacturers and other purveyors of home remedies were in some case behind these attacks on vaccines are also out to turn a profit, I was met with glassy, incredulous stares, followed by a change of subject. Conspiracies and misinformation are obviously harmful. The anti-vaccination movement has already caused outbreaks in measles and a reduction in herd immunity that will ultimately endanger the most vulnerable. Meanwhile, the fraudulent study and doctor behind it have been thoroughly debunked and disgraced. And still, there are thousands of groups that continue to push this dangerous conspiracy. The conspiracy that COVID-19 is spread through 5G cell phone towers has led to the destruction of property and cost millions of dollars. And yet the people who act on these theories believe they are doing good. They believe they are the enlightened heroes fighting the bad people in the world. The scariest part of those who get caught up in this kind of thinking is that they aren't dumb. Plenty of smart people believe some of the most implausible theories imaginable, and some of these people then act on them, which is why learning not to run with these theories and resist sharing them is so imperative. Most of these conspiracies can be dismissed pretty easily, but often aren't because they either confirm existing beliefs or fear. There are a few questions that you can ask yourself to determine whether something is true. 1, is there a logical explanation to what you are seeing? The simplest and most uninteresting answer tends to be the truth. Just because something seems too simple to be true doesn't mean it's not. 2, how many reputable doctors, scientists, or relevant experts back this claim? If the only place you are seeing the claim is a YouTube video or a meme, or perhaps even your crazy Uncle Eddie, the chance that it is garbage is pretty high. Is there a counter argument? If what you are seeing is something you want to agree with, take a moment to check out the other side. Are you actually getting all the information on the subject, or just what the source wants you to see? A good portion of the time, misinformation may contain a kernel of truth to make it seem more plausible, and then leave out the part that doesn't fit the conclusion it wants you to make. At the risk of sounding cynical, I think that there are some who use these falsehoods as a way to avoid dealing with real problems. Conspiracies can sometimes lead not only to dangerous action, but inaction as well. Conspiracies that are formed on the basis of science denial can be an excuse not to take the necessary but inconvenient steps to solve a problem, like in the case of wearing face masks or reducing our carbon footprint. Conspiracies can lead people to fight imaginary boogeymen, but can also lead people to see actual informed experts as boogeymen that should be ignored as well. Frankly, with all the troubling things going on in the world, the pandemic, the political and social unrest, what truly scares me the most is the rampant conspiracies and misinformation. The boogeymen are not online retailers, Big Pharma, or the deep state, but the people behind this bullshit. The real boogeymen are the ones promoting anti-science and false narratives that are meant to confuse and deliberately scare people. Watching friends and loved ones fall victim to these real boogeymen is what I find so disturbing. Even more disturbing is that once convinced of these falsehoods, facts are rendered useless. I could cite 100 valid studies only to be told that it is just part of the cover-up, to be told I am the one being misled, that I am the sheep. I know I can't be the only one who has lost valued relationships to the likes of Alex Jones and other red-faced asshats. However, fantasies and mistruths are not always scary. Sometimes they can be really fun. This is where my own experience really comes into play here. My whole job was to entertain through fantasy. When I stepped out on stage, I became the lie. I was the deception my audience paid to see. My goal was to make them lose their sense of reality for a moment and get immersed in the dream, albeit kind of a dirty dream. I read body language and facial expressions to further the lie. My customers knew up front that they were paying for this fantasy, although some, despite knowing that it was a fantasy, chose to believe anyway, which resulted in disappointment or, in a few cases, anger. Getting caught up in false beliefs, whether they be the one you are presented or even the ones you tell yourself, can make you miserable. While fantasies are fun, and I consider myself an expert on the subject, being a willing participant is important. Misconceptions and false information are the fantasies that others are trying to sell you and require skills to debunk them. The best debunkers are always asking uncomfortable questions and know where to find the facts to sort fantasy from fiction. The truth can be elusive, but is always present if you care to look for it. Enjoy the lap dance, but don't go broke because you don't want to believe it's just a fantasy. Because of my natural tendency to doubt what I was told, I often felt a nagging curiosity when the people in my life gave blanket explanations for very complicated things. Receiving an answer such as, it's magic, or you just have to believe, left me perplexed. As a kid, I could never get my head around how my believing in something made it true. Not to mention, forcing yourself to believe in something may work for the short term, but eventually those doubts will return to tap you on your shoulder and say, but are you sure? I started to realize that I was much happier if I looked for evidence instead of accepting things on faith alone. I also realized that some stories presented as truth were meant to encourage conformity. Finding the courage to question the things you're not supposed to is not an easy thing to do. Being told I was rude for asking too many questions as a kid was the quickest way to get me to stop. I didn't want to be rude, so I stopped and I wallowed in my doubt and curiosity. That festering doubt and curiosity turned into the strength that led me to value facts and the truth. That same strength helped me to get over the pressure to conform